Your friend gets the job, the promotion, the relationship, the opportunity you wanted, or something close to it. You say the right things. You send the right text. You show up at the celebration. And underneath all of it, there's a small sour pulse you can feel running through your chest, a thing you can't quite name out loud, a thing that's almost the opposite of happiness but isn't quite that simple. You've felt it your whole life. You've spent your whole life pretending you haven't. And somewhere quietly underneath, you've concluded this must mean you're a bad person. That conclusion has been wrong the entire time. If you've ever found yourself unable to feel genuine joy at someone else's win, and you've quietly assumed this means there's something wrong with your character, the actual psychology is doing something much more specific than moral failure. The inability to feel happy for someone else isn't evidence that you don't love them. It isn't evidence that you're petty or selfish or shallow. It's evidence that your self-worth system got wired, at some point early in life, to other people's relative position instead of to anything stable inside you, and that wiring is now running in the background every time someone close to you wins. Here's the thing nobody talks about. Self-worth in healthy development gets built around an internal anchor. You learn, slowly, through 1,000 small moments of being seen and valued for who you actually are, that your worth doesn't depend on where other people are standing. That internal anchor is what lets adults celebrate other people's wins without flinching. The friend's promotion doesn't threaten anything because your worth was never built on rank. For a lot of people, that anchor never quite got built. The early environment was scarce in some way that mattered. Love was conditional on achievement. Attention got distributed by comparison between siblings. Praise came only when you were ahead of someone else. In those environments, the developing self learned a different lesson. Worth isn't internal, it's relative. You are valuable to the extent that you are doing better than the people around you. That lesson, once installed, doesn't go away in adulthood. It runs underneath every interaction for the rest of your life, including the moment your closest friend tells you something good happened. In 1954, psychologist Leon Festinger published his foundational paper on social comparison theory. Festinger argued that humans have a built-in drive to evaluate themselves by comparison to other people, and that this comparison process is automatic. What varies between individuals is what they're using the comparison for. Some use it for information. How am I doing? What's possible? Others use it for self-worth. Am I ahead? Am I behind? Am I still valuable? The first version is benign. The second is painful. More recent work by psychologists Jens Langer and Jan Crusius, beginning in 2015, made the distinction sharper. They found envy comes in two distinct neurological flavors. Benign envy motivates effort and admiration. Malicious envy produces the sour, sinking, hollow feeling you've been mistaking for evidence of your bad character. Their research traced malicious envy not to moral failure, but to specific developmental conditions. Childhood environments where worth was conditional, comparison was constant, and attention was scarce. The trait isn't a character flaw, it's a developmental signature. Picture this. You're at a coffee shop with a close friend you genuinely love. She tells you, with cautious excitement, that something good has happened. A book deal, a pregnancy, a relationship that's working. She's watching your face because she knows this matters to her, and you're an important person for her to tell. You smile. You ask the right follow-up questions. You sound genuinely pleased, and part of you is. But there's another part of you, running in parallel, that has already noticed something. This thing she just got is something you've wanted, or it represents a version of life you don't have, or it makes the gap between where you are and where you wish you were suddenly visible at the table. The sour pulse arrives automatically before you can stop it. You walk away from the coffee feeling guilty for feeling it, which is the second layer of pain on top of the first. But here's where it gets interesting. The sour feeling you've been calling jealousy isn't a verdict on how much you love the person. It's a report on how your self-worth system is calibrated. If your worth is anchored internally, other people's wins register as good news about the world. If your worth is anchored to relative position, Other people's wins register as a recalculation of where you stand. Same friend, same news. Two different nervous system responses. Neither one is about love. Both are about wiring. But there's more going on than just wiring. The people who can't quite be happy for others are very often the people who were taught, very early, that attention and love were finite resources. There wasn't enough to go around. Your sibling getting more meant you got less. A parent praising another child meant something was being subtracted from you. That scarcity model gets internalized so deeply that decades later, your friend getting something good still activates the same threat detection system that fired when you were 8 years old watching praise go to someone else. And here's the kicker. The cultural framing of this trait has been almost entirely moral. People who can't be happy for others get called bitter, petty, small-hearted, immature, jealous in the contemptuous sense. Those framings are almost never accurate to the underlying psychology. The people who experience this most painfully are usually the ones with the most active conscience about it, which is why they feel guilty after the coffee. People with genuinely small hearts don't notice they can't feel joy for others. The fact that the sour pulse upsets you is evidence that the part of you that wants to feel joy is intact. Now let's be honest, the reframe in this video applies to the trait. The inability to feel reliable joy for others is a developmental signature, not a character flaw, and it deserves compassion, not contempt. But there's a separate situation worth naming. If your inability to feel happy for others has crossed into wanting bad things to happen to them, into actively undermining people you say you love, into damaging their wins or yourself in response, that's no longer just the wiring running its old program. That's a sign the wiring is doing harm and probably needs a therapist's help to interrupt. But for the people whose inability to feel joy for others is the wiring, here's what's actually happening. You're not a bad person. You're not small-hearted. You're not failing at being a good friend. You're someone whose self-worth got built on the wrong anchor, and the sour pulse you've been calling evidence of your bad character is actually a report from a developmental program nobody has updated in 30 years. The guilt you feel afterward is proof that the part of you that wants to feel joy is alive. That part is just being outshouted in the moment by an older program. The work isn't to feel ashamed of the sour pulse. The work is to recognize the pulse for what it actually is. A report on wiring, not a verdict on worth. And to begin, slowly, the longer project of building the internal anchor, the early environment didn't give you a chance to build. There's something quietly painful about how this trait operates. The people who feel the sour pulse most strongly are very often the people who love their friends most deeply, who want to be good people most urgently, and who have spent the longest time quietly assuming this one thing they can't quite control is the secret evidence of their unworthiness. It isn't. The pulse is the wiring, the wanting to feel joy as who you are. If you've spent years feeling guilty after every celebration, every good piece of news, every moment when someone you love got something they wanted, this might be the moment to consider that the guilt has been pointed at the wrong target. You weren't supposed to suppress the pulse. You were supposed to learn that it was telling you about your childhood, not about your character. You're not a bad person. You're not small-hearted. You're not secretly jealous in the contemptuous sense. You're someone whose self-worth got wired to relative position in a childhood that didn't give you the chance to build it on anything stable. And the sour pulse you've been calling evidence of your bad character is a report on that wiring, not a verdict on who you are. If this is the first time someone has named that for you, you might really like this channel. Silent awareness exists to put words to the quietly different ways your mind works, the kind of things nobody else talks about with any honesty. Hit subscribe and the bell so the next one lands when it's ready.